We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. And today, we're watching Donald Trump lose it, while more and more people, at home and abroad, look at this chaos and think, get him out, now. Because look at him. Look at this demented maniac rotting before our eyes, panicking in public, falling asleep in public, and melting down like the world's most fragile ego trapped in the most powerful office on earth. Yesterday was just another psychotic public collapse, and it is humiliating to the United States. Start with the numbers, because Trump hates numbers he can't bully. His polling is in the gutter. The talking point making the rounds is a latest Pew poll, with Trump at 37% approval and 61% disapproving, 26% approval among Hispanics, and 30% among adults 18 to 29. Now here's the reality check. Pew Research Center's actual August 2025 results put him at 38% approval and 60% disapproval, with Hispanic approval at 27% and ages 18 to 29 at 33%, different by a couple points. Sure, but the message is the same. The country is souring on him, and the trend line screams, what Trump refuses to heed people are done. And then we get the images, the kind that don't need spin, because they spin your stomach all on their own. In the Oval Office yesterday, Trump was once again slumping, zoning out, drifting off during these weird press conferences he insists on, staging like mini coronations. Viral clips like this have been circulating for months, eyes closed, posture collapsing, that unmistakable is he asleep look. Even fact-checkers say there's no definitive proof he was literally asleep, but also admit the footage is exactly why people think he was. And that's the point. The optics are catastrophic, and Trump's entire brand is optics. And it gets worse. At one moment, he seems to not even realize Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right there beside him. He's doing the thank you routine initiative. Thank you both very much. Then it's like his brain buffers. He's scanning around like a lost tourist in his own office and blurts out, thank you. Where's Bobby? Then someone prompts him Bobby, and Trump suddenly snaps into this awkward performance. Bobby. Hello, Bobby. Come here. I love Bobby. Then you're doing a great job, Catherine. All right. That's not leadership. That's a man improvising coherence in real time. Right after that, you've got Catherine Burgum, Doug Burgum, the Interior Secretary's wife, delivering a serious speech in the Oval Office, trying to sound like adults still run the building. She says, these stories matter because they are not isolated. They reflect the reality of the over 190 million Americans. That's half our nation. And while she's talking about half the nation, Trump's head is dipping like the battery is dying. Then Trump shuffles off to another spectacle, a premiere for the Melania movie. Yeah, the one state regime media like Fox, and the usual right-wing megaphones keep pushing. The one nobody wants to see. The one people are mocking as a vanity project with a red carpet. The premiere itself, held at the Kennedy Center on January 29th, 2026, was covered like a glossy brand event, because that's what this administration confuses with governance. And the funding, that part is real and ugly. Reports say Amazon paid about $40 million to acquire the rights, and then poured tens of millions more into marketing, bringing the total investment into the $70 to $75 million range. A documentary-style project getting that kind of money and that kind of theatrical rollout is not normal. It's a monument to oligarch vibes, billionaires cashing checks for proximity to power, while regular people ration groceries. Which brings us to the most shameless move of all, Trump launching a $10 billion lawsuit against his own government. Yes, $10 billion. Trump, along with Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and the Trump Organization filed suit against the IRS and the U.S. Treasury Department, claiming the government failed to prevent the leak of his tax information to news outlets between 2018 and 2020, and that he suffered reputational and financial harm and public embarrassment. He's essentially demanding a massive taxpayer-funded payout because the public learned what he didn't want them to learn. And the leak itself, a former IRS contractor, Charles Edward Littlejohn, was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 2024 after pleading guilty to leaking tax information. So yes, there was wrongdoing. But here's the part Trump won't say out loud. The leaks revealed why he was embarrassed in the first place, reporting that he paid little to no federal income tax in multiple years. Now the original spin you're hearing is that Trump is suing the IRS for $10 billion, that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is effectively tied up in this mess as the government side, and that Pam Bondi is on the defense. The confirmed piece is that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent publicly criticized the contractor's employer over safeguards after the case. The broader point still stands, even if the cable newscasting details shift. Trump is using the presidency like a personal ATM, trying to funnel an astronomical sum of our money back to himself. And while he's chasing billions for his ego, Americans are struggling. Can't afford homes, can't afford groceries, can't get a good education, can't get health care. Meanwhile, Trump and MAGA Republicans have pushed sweeping changes through the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which multiple health policy analyses describe as major cuts and restrictive changes to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. That's the contrast. You lose coverage, he gains cash. And about those taxes, Trump is whining about reputational harm because his records became public. Dude, you were president. Every other modern president released their tax returns voluntarily. And if you really paid what you were supposed to pay, what would you be embarrassed about? Shouldn't your returns prove how rich you are? Unless you weren't that rich, or you were gaming the system, or you were paying donut hole zero, like the reports that he paid $0 in some years and just $750 in others. Then you've got the clown car staffing around him, and it's all the same energy, chaos rumors, and a constant whiff of something not right. There's a clip going around of Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State in this nightmare timeline, during a Senate hearing. People watched him repeatedly put something in his mouth while he drank water and started speculating. Pills meant something else. I'm not your doctor and I'm not your babysitter, so I'm not diagnosing anyone, just telling you what people are reacting to. The clip itself is the story. Americans have so little trust in these officials that a weird mouth movement becomes a national suspicion. And then there's war hawk Lindsey Graham still out here, still pushing conflict, getting hit with a grotesque heckle from journalist Patrick Hawley. Hey, Lindsey,
why don't you just admit that you're gay, and then people won't blackmail you anymore?
People won't blackmail you anymore. That's not accountability. That's a cheap shot, but it shows the rot. Everyone's either enabling blackmailing or trolling. No one is governing. Now watch Trump's foreign policy brain melt in real time. Before he went to that Melania premiere, Trump posted a threat aimed at Canada. He claimed Canada wrongfully and illegally refused to certify Gulfstream jets 500, 600, 700, 800. So he announced the U.S. would decertify Bombardier's Global Express and essentially all aircraft made in Canada, and he threatened a 50% tariff on any and all aircraft sold into the United States if the situation wasn't immediately corrected. That threat was widely reported and immediately raised alarms across aviation and trade circles. Experts pointed out something Trump never understands. In the U.S., the FAA certifies aircraft, not a president throwing a tantrum on social media. And decertifying Canadian aircraft isn't a cute little punishment. It risks disrupting fleets' routes, safety processes, and cross-border supply chains that keep people moving. And then there's the OSINT angle people raised. If you start waving a political axe at Canadian-made platforms, what happens to specialized aircraft? And defense-linked variants tied to U.S. operations. Even the online national security crowd was asking whether Trump understands the downstream impacts of attacking certification systems, like a toddler smashing a thermostat. Then on the red carpet, Trump was asked about the UK getting into business with China because Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in Beijing. Trump called it very dangerous and then pivoted back to Canada. Like a man obsessed, he said Canada can't look at China as the answer. Claimed she is a friend of mine, and then came the line that should be preserved in a museum of presidential stupidity. The first thing they're going to do is say, you're not allowed to play ice hockey anymore. Canada won't be allowed to play ice hockey. That's his geopolitical warning. Meanwhile, Canada's actual leadership has been publicly pushing back on Trump's China narrative. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said Canada has no plan to pursue a free trade deal with China, responding directly to Trump's online threats and mockery about leaving ice hockey alone. And while he's manufacturing a feud with Canada over planes and hockey, Trump's administration is also playing with something even uglier, encouraging separatist fantasies. There's been real reporting about Alberta separatists seeking U.S. support, and Trump world figures flirting with the idea, because nothing says strong ally like trying to fracture your neighbor. This is what country wants him out. Now, looks like in practice, not just Americans exhausted by his corruption, but allies watching him destabilize relationships that took decades to build. Now back to the domestic authoritarianism. At that Melania event, Trump was asked why Tulsi Gabbard was with the FBI during a raid connected to Fulton County, Georgia election offices, where 2020 ballots and election materials were seized. Trump brushed it off. She's working very hard trying to keep the election safe. Big announcements planned. Here's what matters. The raid happened. Hundreds of boxes of 2020 election materials were seized, and Gabbard's presence raised serious legal and political questions because the Director of National Intelligence isn't supposed to be doing domestic law enforcement stunts like this. That's the play. Intimidate local election officials, seize materials, seed suspicion, and set the stage to undermine the 2026 midterms. You don't have to call it Gestapo to see the authoritarian pattern, using state power to terrorize opponents and launder conspiracy theories into official action. And then Trump pivots to Iran, like he's narrating his own action movie. He publicly acknowledges what everyone already knew. The Ayatollah's regime has massacred protesters by the thousands. But remember earlier, he told Iranian protesters, "Go out, we've got your back," implying immediate consequences. If the regime killed even one demonstrator, then thousands were killed anyway. And now after the massacre, Trump struts around bragging, "I stopped 837 hangings 2 weeks ago." Iran has disputed that claim, with reporting noting Iranian officials denied the story that hundreds of executions were scheduled and then halted because Trump said so. At the same time, Trump is escalating militarily bolstering U.S. forces in the region and ramping up threats, while regional partners urge restraint and reportedly refuse to allow their airspace or territory to be used for attacks. So the script becomes, he failed to protect people when he promised he would. Then he uses their deaths as a backdrop for saber-rattling, and even allies are trying to stop him from lighting the match. And while he was playing games with Iran, what was he busy doing Venezuela? In early January 2026, multiple major outlets reported the United States carried out strikes in Venezuela and captured Nicolas Maduro, an extraordinary escalation that shook the region and raised global alarm. Whether you think Maduro is a villain or not, this is the pattern. Trump loves dramatic force, hates sustained responsibility, and treats international crises like campaign content. Now the propaganda machine tries to polish all of this into a highlight reel. Fox runs the alert graphic, Trump suing the IRS for $10 billion. Then on the red carpet, he drops another bombshell, teasing that he'll announce his Fed chair pick tomorrow morning. It's always tomorrow, always a reveal, always a spectacle, because spectacle is the only thing standing between his base and the obvious truths. They're being robbed. And while Trump is suing his own government for $10 billion, California Governor Gavin Newsom files something grounded in actual law, a civil rights complaint against Dr. Mehmet Oz, now a Trump administration official, running the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, after Oz posted a video accusing Los Angeles Armenian community of being tied to massive hospice fraud. Newsom's complaint argues the remarks were discriminatory and harmful to Armenian businesses and families. The reporting notes Oz referenced the Russian-Armenian mafia and filmed in front of an Armenian bakery, sparking backlash and fear. So compare the two lawsuits. Newsom is demanding civil rights accountability. Trump is demanding a $10 billion ego payout. And then comes the question the public is asking, because the public is not stupid. How do you justify Jeff Bezos' company paying $40 million to license Melania's film and spending tens of millions more promoting it, while Amazon has cut jobs? That's the core of oligarchy. The billionaire class buys access, and the working class eats the bill. Reporting on the film's release emphasized the extraordinary scale of Amazon's spending and the unusually wide theatrical release for what's essentially a branded documentary project. Trump's answer: blame Obama. Go ask President Obama, who got paid a lot of money and hasn't done anything. He says, then insists Melania really produced and calls it a very important piece of work. That's the reflex when caught point at a Democrat, even if it makes no sense, especially if it makes no sense. And just to make sure you understand who Trump thinks deserves the American dream, listen to what he said in a cabinet meeting when asked about bringing down housing prices. He said basically no. He wants to keep prices up for people who already own homes, keep them wealthy. He says he doesn't want to destroy the value of their homes so that somebody that didn't work very hard can buy a home. He wants interest rates down, sure, but the message is clear. If you're struggling, if you're low income, if you're locked out of the market, too bad. That isn't a slip. That's the ideology. So here we are, a president slumped in his chair while half the country sweats rent. A president threatening allies over airplanes, and hockey while stability burns. A president turning the IRS leak into a $10 billion shakedown, while Medicaid gets carved up, and a public watching, exhausted, angry, and increasingly unwilling to play along. Trump loses it because control is slipping. And when authoritarians lose control, they don't suddenly become humble, they become dangerous. And if you want more of this kind of breakdown, you already know what to do. Subscribe, stay loud, and stay ungovernable. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us